Oh, aliens.
Time's up. Let's do this.
We're in for a wild night.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 206 of Born to be Wild, a wild and wild adjacent Hearthstone podcast where we have fun hanging out with friends, talking about the wild and wild adjacent formats of Hearthstone, and spotlighting members of the wild and wild adjacent communities. I am your host, ElectricSheepCity. It's great to be back on this beautiful Friday evening here in hot and sunny Colorado. I am joined by fellow hosts, Hydralisk.
I require more Vespine gas.
And SchmoopieDady!
Happy to be back contributing to the pod after a week off.
For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome aboard. We record this podcast live every Friday evening at twitch.tv/borntobewildhs, and the video version of this podcast is then posted to YouTube shortly thereafter. Audio versions are also distributed to all podcast apps. However you are watching, listening, or absorbing via osmosis this podcast today, thank you. Yes, you.
Content plug, SchmoopieDady. Before we get into the main topic of the show tonight, I'd like to say a quick thank you to Shakuna and the other patrons of our show. Your support means the world to us. If you are enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, and comment on this video on YouTube. Another simple way to support the show is to leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching live on Twitch, we've got some awesome emotes that you can unlock by subscribing to the channel. This is free if you use Amazon Prime. Finally, if you'd like to support the show financially, you can join our Patreon for as little as $1 per month. We have some channels in the Discord that are unlocked by subscribing to the Patreon, where you can see the show coming together each week. Check it out. If you'd like to interact with us personally, please join our Discord, a free and amazing online community of friends all across the world who love talking about Wild Hearthstone. Links to all of this stuff and more, including our merch, can be found on our website, which is www.borntobewildhs.com. Sheep, how's your week?
My week was very interesting. So first, I hit Legend in Standard. And yeah, thank you. I think I entered at 508. Yes, 508 in Standard. Still working on my wild climb. I have climbed up into the Diamond 5-4 range with my Listener Series decks. Turns out they're pretty decent, honestly. I think I went from like Plat to like Diamond 10 with like
That's really
Big Shaman,
just like two
like,
drops, and yeah.
So from like Plat 10 to like Diamond 10, I use like meta or meta-ish decks like Big Shaman and Renathal Reno Shadow Priest. And then from Diamond 10 to Diamond 4, I was playing a lot of 2-drops and one card that was not a 2-drop, because that is the challenge for week 4 of the Born to be Wild listener series. So like my Druid plays the quest line. It's a 1-drop and everything else is a 2-drop. My Hunter plays the quest line and everything else is a 2-drop. My Paladin plays Uther, and everything else is a 2-drop, because you can play Sing Along Buddy and the Garrison Commander, I think is his name. And those are both 2-drops, so you can still do the OTK. Yeah. And then the other one that I brought was Priest. Dark Bishop Benedictus is not a 2-drop, but everything else is. Honestly, that's the one that I climbed with the most.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't run many of the pirates. It runs like the 2-mana 3/2, where if you're holding a shadow spell, then you deal 2 damage. But so it doesn't run patches. It actually doesn't run, the one that I built doesn't run Parachute Brigand. You totally could. But But since that's
Well,
your
you
only
can't
other
burn
pirate,
patches, right?
yeah, no, you can't. Unless that was your only non 2-drop. But I'd rather have the Shadow Priest hero power.
I brought something similar. It almost feels like for starters, we're playing like a bunch of 2-drops that have featured in Shadow Priest at some point over its lifetime, but we haven't had like better cards to substitute for them. It almost, I feel like, plays a little bit more like the dragon version of Shadow Priest, where you were never winning with Zarimi anyway, but you were dropping down medium-sized bodies that were kind of hard to deal with and remove immediately, and they got chip damage in, and then you just sort of like, you know, kill from hand whenever you get the chance to. I don't know. That's the vibe I got from. I think we didn't bring the same exact list, but we brought something pretty similar this week, and that's kind of the feel I got from it.
Yeah. Yeah, completely agreed. And I will say, I wasn't running Sing-Along Buddy in my Shadow Priest before, but I think Sing-Along Buddy was in every single one of my decks. Flint was in most of them, not quite all. Astalor was in every single one of my decks, because it's like... it's an entire series of cards, like
exclamation point Astalor. It's just all the late game you ever need.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. So did a lot of had a lot of fun testing my listeners series decks on ladder to some decent success as well. Outside of Hearthstone, I finished my grad class and I got an A-. I'm a little bummed about that, because like I was pulling a solid, like, you know, 97%, and then the expectations for the references changed for the final project, which is worth 35% of your grade. So the references were the expectations were the same for all the previous assignments, critical thinking assignments, and for the last one, with no warning, no wording change, nothing. Was expected to use those in all of them, even though it only said the executive summary, which is what it said in all the others. So, you know, I dropped down to an A- instead of like a solid A. So a little bummed about that, because like really in the rubric, that was the only thing I got like dinged on, but it was a big thing. And so I got like an 80 something, which brought me down significantly. So
Interesting.
Kind of bummed about that, but
Did you need a D+?
See, if I had a B+, I still would have gotten an A. Like A is as high as it goes. If I had gotten a D+, I still would have had an A-. But I had like a B, like solid B, not B+, not B-, but solid B.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it is what it is.
Dude, it's still an A, man. You still
Yeah.
got an A. Don't beat yourself up.
It's still
Like,
an A,
it's-
but it brings my GPA down to like a 3.93 instead of a 3.96. So
Yeah, look at SchmoopieDady. It's like, whoopty frickin' do, 3.93.
Dude, you're talking to a solid 89 student in high school, which if you're doing that math to like college math, that's like what, a 3.3?
yeah, I didn't really try in high school. I just kind of like showed up and would do my like assignments before like school started.
Yeah,
If
I would
I-
do
if
that
I
again
did
if
them?
I could.
100%.
In grad school though, like I'm actually trying, yo. So and finally, probably the reason why I'm a little looser this week is you know, I mentioned last week that my wife had her appendectomy and all that stuff. So I've been throughout the middle of the night been, you know, the point person for our son, and also getting up with him super early. And he hasn't been sleeping well through the night, so neither have I. So today in particular, I've been up since 1 a.m. Because he kept on getting up and then going back down, getting up and going back down. I never had to actually go in there last night, but he was up and down and up and down. I haven't
Sheep
slept through the
derangement
knife in 2 weeks. Yeah, sheep derangement.
Sheep derangement hours.
That is exactly what it is.
Yay.
So it's going to be a real weird one this week. We're just going to get weird with it. And you know what? Let's get weird with it with Hydra's week. Hydra, how was your week, buddy?
Well, speaking of weird, last week was Cthulhu week, right?
Yeah.
That's what we did? Yeah. So I played Arrow Bounce in our series, and that was really fun. I started off, no, it's Cthulhu week, so it's fun, right? It's not super OP, nothing like that. And I went 2-0 at the beginning, and I was like, all right, like we're going quite well. However, it's because I think so my druid was banned, and I banned Arrow Bounce's druid as well, because why would you not ban a Cthulhu druid? It kind of makes sense. Ridiculous mana cheat, all that sort of stuff. But I was left with, I could have done a better job. Let's say this. So I had a Cthulhu priest was my deck that was left. So I had a Cthulhu warrior and a Cthulhu rogue, which I won with. The druid was banned. Like, the rogue and warrior went quite well. The priest was hot garbage. I am going to say it was hot garbage. So I proceeded to now lose the next two and almost get reverse swept. Arrow Bounce did an amazing job, and I think honestly I just drew better on that final game, like game 5, and just drove it home with a terrible deck. So like I do apologize. You must. Arrow Bounce did brick. I feel like on the draw, and I ended up bringing that one home. Honestly, it was not like the best deck in the world, but walked away with the win. So GG's Arrow Bounce, and then we move into this week, which I have built my decks. I am playing OTZ. I have not played yet, but I am stoked to play. I feel like I guess we're gonna do that thing tomorrow, and. Yeah, pretty stoked. I don't know how everyone else's brain works to building these things, but quests are something that I think of as well. So
yeah,
I did what do I have? I built Raid the Docks just because I was like, okay, I could do like a 1 mana Raid the Docks, and then I could play a bunch of pirates, and then I can have a bunch of cool stuff after. So I did that thing. I also did Shadow Priest, and I gotta check what else I built. I already forgot. But it was, it'll be pretty cool. Oh yeah, I think I did a rogue, and what's my final one? I forget already. But anyway, well, I'll be playing that tomorrow, I figure, and that'll be good. OTZ's a nice person, and I'm stoked to play against them. If outside of Hearthstone, I unfortunately have not finished any books since my last update from last week. However, I did start George Orwell's 1984 again.
1984? Wait. I can't let this go.
Not Animal Farm.
1984?
Yeah.
1984 is in chat? We have to do 1984 in chat. We have to do 1984 in chat. He's
Super
actually
mimetic.
reading 1984 right now. Come on.
All right. Yeah, no, so I read the book a couple times a long time ago, and I decided to give it another one. So I am counting it as a new book, even though I haven't read it. I mean, it's been like at least 15 years since I read it the last time. So I figured I'd do that again, and I'm almost done. I got like 30 pages left in the book, something like that. So I could go finish it like in an hour and a half, something like that. But yeah, so that's going well. And then I tried to actually start to read A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess, and holy crap, I don't know if you guys know this, but he invented his own language basically for the stinking book.
It's called NADSAT.
Like, yes, it is called NADSAT. That is true. And it is ridiculous. So I've seen the movie a few times. I'm glad you knew that, Sheep. And yeah, Vidiwell, all that stuff, like the way he speaks. Sometimes you can figure out what he's saying, but
it's based on Cockney, right?
So NADSAT is a combination between a few different languages, but chief among them are Russian and English. So like slushy, like listen, or like did you hear? my Droog, like my friend. The version of A Clockwork Orange that I read back in the day had like a NADSAT dictionary in the back. And so for the first
Gotcha.
like 20, 30, maybe 40 pages, like I was going back to that NADSAT dictionary like on the regular, like back and forth and back and forth. After that, like it was the exception to the rule that I'd have to go back there because it just kind of became second nature to me. Like it's an incredible book, but you absolutely need that NADSAT dictionary in order to understand what's going on in the early game of the book, for sure.
Yeah, the most meta thing about the entire experience is NADSAT is also actually an invention by Anthony Burgess.
Yeah,
it's actually not even real itself, right? So like he has invented the language and his own, and then dictionary, and then you have got to read the book and you got to figure out what he's saying. If the I don't know what the original version looked like when it came out. If there was no NADSAT, like
I don't know,
to English dictionary, you'd be so confused. So I read like the first chapter laying in bed a couple nights ago, and I'm like, yeah, I've seen the movie, but I don't know what this guy is talking about at all. Because it's so far out there, right? So then I pulled up on my phone the NADSAT dictionary, like on Wikipedia, and so I'm looking at that, and I'm trying to read the book, and I'm like, I just, when I'm laying in bed and I want to read my book for the last hour of the night, I don't want to have to look up every third word at that point in time. So I will get back to it because I've always loved the movie, and I like Stanley Kubrick makes amazing movies, and Anthony Burgess does do awesome stuff as well. So I just want to make sure that I eventually get through the book, but it was not to relax, not at that point in time.
Yeah. You'll really like it when you eventually feel like wading through it, but it's pretty dense, particularly at the beginning because of that like constant look up. So you'll really enjoy it, but it's not like a relax book like you're talking about at the end of a long day, for sure.
Yeah. Though I am looking forward to seeing how, like, I'm a person who likes to read the book then watch the movie. This one is much in reverse, and same with The Shining by Stanley Kubrick. Most people I feel like saw the movie before they read the book, kind of thing, right? Because it was huge. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing that and seeing how good that the book really is. It's not long. It's only like a 200 pager or something. It's not big by any means, but I'll do it for sure. Other than that, the other thing that I did this week was Blister Guy and myself have really been trying to get through the raid that was released in Warcraft Rumble, and that is Molten Core. And crazily enough, one of the bosses that is partway through is Gar, and Goliath, I'm sure, can tell us all about Gar on the Molten Core raid. But this guy is hard. He is extremely so.
He's guard
as a rock guard. He also looks
as
like
a rock. Oh, that was good too.
But so basically, we were trying because lining up our times to play are very difficult when someone lives in Australia 17 hours ahead of where I am. Quite difficult. So what we've been doing is he'll play like at his lunch hour, and it's like evening for me, and we're trying to line it up, and we're trying to do these raids, and so we get this like hour or so amount of time to do, and we couldn't send it home, and so the raid was only open for a week, and it's not coming back for another month. So unfortunately, we did not get to close, but we learned a lot, and we had a lot of fun. A little disappointing. I am telling you, we got multiple times so close that there was like less than a millimeter in the health bar of the boss. And we died first. And it was just so sad.
So close.
But exciting at the same time. So looking very much forward to when it comes back. We're going to level up all of our minis, they call them. And oh yeah, we'll be ready next. We'll be ready next time.
Are the minis 1 mana 1/1s?
No,
they should be.
I wish. There are 1 mana ones, but I know that it's a curve, just like Hearthstone. You got a curve and you got mana and all that stuff. But yeah, we didn't quite get there, but we'll do it next time. I think it was a valiant effort that we made. I don't think too many people in general, like if they could show stats of people that have actually beaten the raid, I bet the numbers are super small, in all honesty. But yeah, we'll push for it next time. It was great. It was good fun. And that's basically my week, other than it's the freaking weekend and I'm so excited because I want to do nothing, but I have to do yard work. SchmoopieDady, how was your week?
My week was great. This last week was the last week of classes for me. So I was showing Interstellar because it, unlike some classes that are showing Interstellar because it's a good movie, it actually has some concepts that I sort of cover on with my class.
Yeah.
Off and on, especially towards the end. We talk about relativity. We do talk about a little bit of time dilation. It's an elective level class. No, it does not have a bunch of people who want to be there, but I try to make it interesting for the ones that are, and that's been largely successful. And so I'm like, okay, guys, I promise I'm going to show this movie, and it's good. It's not just good because I'm a nerd. It's just objectively a good movie. And by the end of it, they're just like, yo, Mr. SchmoopieDady, that movie was tough. And so like that's
True.
True. And so that's
Real.
that's how you know. That's how you knew. Yeah, you got them there. And like, and I made sure I did a recap, and I made sure that I did, like, before we started every day, I stood up in front of the class and I made sure, okay, here's where we are, here's the main points, here's, the science that does relate to stuff that we have talked about, and just sort of put it into a frame, because like day one is actually a little slow.
Yeah.
The first 45 minutes are actually a little slow. They're world building. And like, and Matthew McConaughey is just sort of like, side smiling to himself half the time. So like, if you're not all that engaged, you're not really sure what's going on. And then
He's only giving one all right.
yeah, all right. And then like, by day 2, they're like, all right, yeah, he's going in space, stuff's going down, okay. And then like by day 3, Matt Damon's going down. You're like, whoa, wait a minute, wait, what is Matt Damon doing, right? And like one of the kids was just like, yo, that's a guy from A Beautiful Mind. And I'm like, it's not, but they are like the same generation of actor. Right, so like he's messing up like Leonardo DiCaprio for Matt Damon, but it's fine. It's like, it's all right. It's not, and I'm sorry, Zoomer, you're wrong. But so like that's fun. And then I got to share with them the Matthew McConaughey Chrysler commercials, which if you've never seen them, are excellent, and they're even more excellent when they're put into focus by.
I drive a Lincoln, but SchmoopieDady thinks it's a Chrysler.
that one, I Lincoln, yeah. I drive a Lincoln, right? And like why he drives a Lincoln, and like I don't know, he gets into a staring contest with a bull and he loses, and like that's supposed to be a good commercial. I don't know what he's doing. I have no idea what he's doing. No one does, and an SNL covered it and like did a better job of selling Lincolns than he did. It's just amazing. And then combine anyway, but it's so that there's that going on, and also my students are just like, how old is this movie? Like saying like it's like an old movie, and then I'm looking at the date, I'm like, oh, what? Crap. To them it is old. It's almost 10 years old at this point.
It's like 2014 or something.
It's like it's like 2016. I think it's 2016.
And you got to remember,
and they think it's old.
These are high schoolers,
Yeah.
so like if it's
Yeah,
about
it is
10
old
years
for them.
old, if they're 17, it came out when they're 7.
Even 8 years old.
Yeah, it is old for them. It is
Yeah.
old.
I mean,
For them, it really is.
I guess because think about it this way: when I was 10, right in like the exact middle of the 90s, to me, listening to like Van Halen technically was old, even though they were. It wasn't actually.
No, but it's like a different generation, right? And so like I had some students that were just like, yo, Mr. SchmoopieDady, this is my last day. It's been real, right? And we're doing a handshake, right? And and it's like, dude, it's Monday. He's like, yeah, but I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back. But I'm finishing this movie. This movie seems good, right? And so like I got them with the real based goated with the sauce, probably mint chutney. So
I don't get it.
So I
That's
speak
okay.
fluent Zoomer. There's a clip of it on Twitch.
It's
Don't show it to your
hilarious.
kids.
Don't show it to your kids.
Don't show it to your kids. So anyway, I did that. We had that shared experience. There was a little bit of education still going on, which is kind of the theme with my classes. Like, even if it doesn't look like we're doing education, oh wait, I can still sneak in that I'm teaching you something. And then Hearthstone wise, Sheep mentioned it last show. I hit Legend and Twist. I had 11x. Got a nice shiny rank playing Nozdormu. Which was very much like it was very much like a reaffirming, because like I looked at Nozdormu's hero power and I have the receipts from the DM in the Born Be Wild DM where we were gonna have the show, we were gonna highlight classes, and then like Twist came out and we got data right away being like, okay, Arthas is busted, but I highlighted it as just like, oh, I don't see how Nozdormu can be bad, because you start with an extra mana crystal and your hero power is basically life tap with mana cheat, specifically tutoring dragons. How can this suck unless the list is terrible?
And it's not.
And it's not, and it's actually decent. And I haven't played a lot of Twist post Legend. I hit Standard Legend this week. I don't remember if that was yesterday or not. No, 2 days ago? Yesterday? Who cares? Probably yesterday. With Painlock. Painlock in Standard is basically a wild deck, which was nice. Once you learn the meta and you can figure out what you can get away with and how much damage you can kind of accept, like Priest is just a punching bag. It's hysterical. Priest just sort of, they don't have any kind of like really grandiose removal until turn 7. So like you kind of just like do whatever you want, and they reduced all my attack by 2 across the board. Whatever am I going to do? Play more stats. I'm going to play more stats and maybe a Zilliax or something. I don't know. I'm going to hit them in the face really, really freaking hard. I came in at like low 2K, which is like about halfway up the ladder. I wouldn't hate playing Standard more. I might for a charity stream later in the month. But I also am not going to go out of my way to play Standard. And so that was pretty much like, my big Hearthstone accomplishments. I'm just sort of treading water in Wild. Oh, I'm playing listener series decks actually on stream in a Survivor competition, attempting to figure out last week's who made the best Cthulhu deck to survive in Wild. It was Raxius. Raxius made a Reno Druid, and she made a Reno Priest, and so it's basically her Reno Druid and her Reno Priest, which are represented by Waluigi Time and Flare, and so we have to figure out who's going to get into my vault. Is it going to be Waluigi Time or is it Flare? My vault is is a private Discord, by the way, where I've been saving deck lists. Not Born to Be Wild After Dark. That's my week. Gee golly, what's the news?
Welcome to the news. The news is so good.
And how? So first off, basically, so it was on June 11th, which was Tuesday of this week. We had another round of Twist balance updates. Another one. So these again were health balance updates to the different heroes. So we haven't had a balance patch for in general, which is when we expect to have more substantive, less health based updates. So these updates, the Lich King went down from 27 to 25, just kind of nudged down a little bit.
Not bad.
Alakir also from 27 to 25, just kind of nudged down a little bit.
That's fine too.
Yeah. Kel'Thas went from 35 down to 30. It's still solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised it took him this long. Yeah.
It's like a decent deck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Zyrella went down from 33 to 32. Talk about a nudge. One.
Yeah.
Somebody was just like, I'm pretty positive they just did this. Somebody in a different Discord was just like, they totally just did it because like 33 is so ugly they had to make it 32. Maybe they're right. Maybe it was 32.5 when they were looking at their slide rule metric where they're just like, all right, the data says we should adjust Xyrella to this health. And like they did 33 last week, and then somebody was just like with OCD was just like, oh my God, you can't have it 33. You cannot make it 33. You've got to make it 32. At least make it divisible by 2, please.
I don't know about you, but I'm putting Xyrella down to 32.
Yeah.
I like to see the spreadsheet for all this. Like, in all honesty.
And our final nerf was another one to Arthas. Arthas went from 20 down to 18. Alakir enjoyers rejoice because now you only have to play 3 legendary elementals and choose the fireball. And you dealt with Arthas. You can just trade on board and just pick the fireball 3 times and you win.
But why?
That's Arthas.
Arthas.
That's the one weird one, right? Like that's the one strange one. It's just like, really? That's
18 is low. It's low.
it's only 2 less than 20. Why?
I was playing it at 20, and it's so vulnerable. It's quite vulnerable already.
It is.
And like I was still winning with it at 20, and I guess that's why they're doing it. But 18, that's rough.
and 18 really is just a whole different world in terms of breakpoints. I was joking about Alakir and 3 different like fireballs to face basically.
No, but that's legitimate. That's
a legitimate strategy at this point. Like you can trade on board and just whenever you play a legendary elemental, choose a 6 damage to face and you get 3 of them, you win. Whereas before it was 4 of them. And Arthas could stabilize. Arthas could generate the Azurite snake, heal up a little bit, etc. So it is a while it's only 2 health, it is kind of an important breakpoint in that format. Sure. Twist also has some buffs. So Dr. Boom went from 50 up to 60, got more opportunities to not really shuffle in the bombs, though yes, but to hopefully have their opponents draw bombs, which is the big difference there. Guff Rune Totem went from 40 up to 50. I think I've played all the heroes, but I can't recall playing the Guff game.
Guff is like Questline Druid without the like every time you gain armor, do you gain attack? Is that what it is? I think
it's that or vice versa.
Yeah, it's one of the. It's just very facey. I don't know. Flair plays it a lot, and it's like okay.
King Crush also was buffed from 45 health up to 50.
I'll take it. Cool.
Yeah. Crush was already fun. Giving them a little bit more time to get things kind of rolling. Makes sense. And finally, N'Zoth the Corruptor up from 40 to 45. Giving them a little bit more time too.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't know if it's enough.
Generally speaking, can I just say, since I wasn't on the pod last week, that I think these health updates have been very effective.
Yeah.
We can kind of like quibble over like, oh, well, this is a little goofy that they've dropped this by 1 or they dropped this by 2, or like you can quibble over like individual updates. That's fine. But without a shadow of a doubt, impacting the health has absolutely had the impact on the meta itself that they planned. And even if like, let's say the initial impact wasn't like as much as they wanted, and like you can be critical there, I think a little bit of grace is needed for them to get enough data, for them to get enough situations where they'll get better and better at dialing in exactly how much health they need to adjust by, I feel like, to make things competitive or not competitive based on how they play out, based off of historical precedents. They've never had to nerf by health before classes, and so keep an eye on this, because like they're doing stuff in Twist to see how effective it would be and whether or not they could introduce it into standard or constructed or what have you. So like I joked this week on Twitter, hey, can we adjust Rogue down to 15 health? Which will be a topic for later.
To be continued.
But but like unironically, like they could start like I would take it. Look at it this way. As Wild players, from our perspective, would we rather have them begin nerfing cards right away? Or would we rather have them touch the health of classes early in an expansion when things are just playing out? I'm kind of leaning, like, especially if they can tune it in where, like, only standard, they're adjusting Rogue's health. Only standard, they're adjusting Paladin's health. And everything's left the same in Wild, and including the cards. I'd almost prefer that, because I feel like the trend that has happened recently with the last couple expansions has been like we've been having a lot of fun, and then standards ruined it, and then like overall has made the format worse. This is ignoring the fact that we have had like Wild specific balance patches also sort of weaved in. Like we've gotten rid of, we've reduced infinite quest mage and stuff like that. But I'm just saying in general, it's like, okay, like standard has something sort of messed up happening, and like it's not balanced for standard, but it's fine for Wild. We could still have Dep Aura possibly if they just adjust Paladin down to like, I don't know, 10 health, right? So so like this is something to keep an eye on, where this could actually be super beneficial for balancing both formats in the future, especially if they can really key it in and be like, okay, in standard these are the adjustments we're going to make, so that it doesn't end up changing it up.
To kind of and that I think we kind of saw some precedents for this in Battlegrounds. So in between like proper balance updates to the cards, we would see balance updates to the armor, because armor is a really big thing in Battlegrounds in particular. Additionally to that, we haven't seen like a more than just a data only patch since this season of Twist has started. We're recording on June 14th. It's been 2 weeks, right? This is the third. We've had 3 of these health updates. We haven't had a balance update since it's released. I think that's a brilliant way of introducing this kind of server side change that really impacts the meta, especially in something like this month's Twist and next month's Twist, because we already know that they're just adding some heroes to that. Because yes, in more substantive, not just data only patches, we can see some additional changes. We don't know what those may be yet. We haven't seen it yet. But in data only patches, we've now seen 3 of these updates to the health totals, which have had a significant impact. First they were kind of nudging, then they went more extreme, like Cthulhu to 80. What? They're not afraid to kind of nudge, to push balance in this format, to keep things relatively healthy until they can actually push a proper balance change out there. And I really like the innovation in this. I've kind of gone back and forth on Twist in general, not in the fun of the game, not in the fun of the mode, because I love the mode. The mode's my favorite one, but in the level of, if not support, then kind of attention that the mode gets. And I think I've said this before, I don't want this to be the only thing that Twist becomes, but I really like this as something that Twist is about a third to half of the time, because they can make these kinds of changes. And because what I really like about Twist, and this is kind of my thesis, what I started here, is that they're not afraid to take chances and make some innovative and just kind of off the wall choices with the mode. And I think that this is a prime example of how they can balance it without needing like not just data only patches, but full blown patches to kind of balance the mode. So I really like what they're doing with this season of Twist. Hydra, it looked like you wanted to say something as well, friend.
Yeah, I've just been soaking it all in here, and I noticed you guys are mentioning that, like, hey, this is really cool and innovative, and what if they bring this into the other modes? If I had a gun to my head and had to give you an answer right now, I would say there's no way in McGurgle land they would do this into constructed, standard, or wild.
I agree with you. Yeah.
I cannot see it ever happening because of the fact that there's different archetypes, right? Like there is a control warrior and there's an aggro warrior, like that kind of. There is control druids and there's aggro druids. Like there is control priests and there are aggro priests. Like this goes across multiple classes, and I cannot see it ever happening because I do not think they can collect the appropriate amount of data to foresee what would happen if they take, say, an aggressive class. I'm not going to name any at this point in time, but bring it down to 20 health. Yeah, but
Rogue.
No, I'm saying like standard and wild or whatever. Like, let's say one class is just excessively aggressive. You bring it down to 20 health or whatever. What's stopping them from switching to a different archetype that may or may not be broken, and they don't know how to balance that, right? So I honestly, the game has given you the ability to have within certain classes like Death Knight and whatnot of having different health. Renathal has done that sort of thing. We've been able to have different healths. But as for just straight out of the gate, I honestly would put money on. I would be willing to put money on the fact they won't give us different health on the existing classes unless they invent monk and it starts with a different thing. Just because there are different hero power costs, that has happened, right? That is the thing. I don't think they are switching up randomly nerfing. Okay, Hunter is now at 20 because it's notoriously aggressive. Rogue is now 20, it's notoriously aggressive. I don't think that's going to happen. SchmoopieDady.
But before we go to SchmoopieDady, because this is a pretty quick point. What are the possibilities? Could be even tying like a health buff or debuff nerf to a card. For example, Secret Passage.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to play Secret Passage, you take a -5 health. You're only playing with 25 health. That would be kind of an innovative idea that might address something that we'll talk about in a little bit. SchmoopieDady, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit because I think in a 4-set format, which Standard is currently in, there's probably the least amount of lateral movement that you're going to get. A class, not every class has an aggro or control archetype right now. Or at least not like good versions of it in Standard, as far as I'm concerned. Like, okay, yeah. I played against a couple Reno Paladins, but like Reno Paladin in Standard is just kind of funny because it's just kind of like, haha, you only have one copy of your good cards. And so
Priest being the only, I think, outlier for that. They have an aggro and a control.
Yeah, and like would I be shocked if like they gave a class a little bit more health to help it, and then all of a sudden, oh man, this control deck is way too tuned up, man. Ooh, well, I mean, but if they're doing this every week, then they just like the next week they just knock the health off again. They said, well, that's how you get control priests. We don't want that. And so I don't know. I think this is going to be a tool that could possibly be in their tool chest specifically in the future, specifically for especially Standard. Where the card pool is more limited, and honestly, let's be real, in the newer sets, strategies are often pushed and are blatantly obvious and come in packages, and so like you look at it and you say, all right, so like right now, let's take Standard right now from a like a Demon Hunter perspective. What Demon Hunters can you really make? Right now, you can make a big Demon Hunter. What's up?
Shopper Demon Hunter is the only meta one. Big
quota. I would call that like a big Demon Hunter, basically, right? Like that's really what you're looking for. You're looking for specific targets with that. You're cheating mana.
Yeah.
You're trying to get out big demons with big effects. Mostly, you're trying to do what's his face that deals the 3 AOE. But like
Magtheridon,
yeah, Magtheridon. But you could also get like a you can also get a cheap green rag. Yeah, there's things you could do, right?
Yeah.
So there's that strategy, and then there's Naga DH. And that's it. Like there's no, like you could make a Reno DH and try to go a little slower, and maybe a little more health makes that somewhat viable. But I don't think I don't think there's really a lot of support for that. And so, I don't know. I think in standard, at least, reducing health, increasing health is fairly safe because you kind of know what archetypes you're impacting and which ones are supposed to be like the newest, the hottest, the greatest. That gets a little bit messier. Yeah. It gets a little bit messier later when you start having 6 expansions and you have more of a card library, but also these guys know where the cards are going to go. Like, I don't know how far in advance they build the sets, but it's at least 1 set in advance, right? Maybe 2. So they kind of know.
I think it's like a year, 2. Like, it's significant.
So they kind of have a little bit of a peak too, as far as like, all right, well, like we can't leave Priest at like 55 health forever because they're getting like, you know, reprint Spirit Lash, but better, and also it summons 5/5s. So like they get a little peek at like what they can get away with and what they can't get away with. I wouldn't be so sure that you don't see this used, even if it's like maybe not as often as Twist. Twist is every week. That seems extreme. But maybe instead of these little balance patches where they're whacking cards and then they're making standard arguably, in some people's words, dumber or like less interesting, maybe a little whack to health instead might be in order. And that way they don't have to kill cards or impact cards, and they can leave mechanics the same. But like Sheep was saying, they can change breakpoints. And breakpoints in gameplay, that's a real change. And that's impactful change. We've seen it be real and impactful change. Yeah, I think this is not a tool that they're just doing for the sake of Twist. I don't believe that. I think this is an experimental proving ground to see if this can be used in a larger scale.
I think I see both sides of it, like completely right. A simpler way to nerf something, health total done, right? Like that seems like a way easier way to deal with it, especially in a format that's only going to be around for a month, right? Is how I see it. They can toss it back and forth. But if you think about it, I mean, my opinion only, but statistics wise, all classes in general are balanced around having 30 health, right? They have any cards that affect that have been considered. If you change one class to have a different amount of health, you're now balancing against all of the other classes, right? There are so many factors that now come into play. You didn't just affect that one thing. You have to think about every other class and all of their archetypes versus this one thing because you just changed the health total. I think it's a statistic nightmare in my head is how I see it. Even though it seems like a simple answer, and I think that as well, right? Underpowered, overpowered, +5, -5 could be simple. But like I honestly think that we've seen things in like let's go in Wild just storm the meta, take over everything because of one tiny advantage, and I just see adjusting the health total is, in my opinion, like I said, not the greatest idea. I like it for temporary mode because Twist, as much as I love it, seems like a rotating thing, like a tavern brawl, but more competitive, and I think that that's cool. As for standard, their moneymaker. That people are coming back for constantly. You just made my priest 20 health. What the hell? Right? Like I don't know.
Schmoopie started to say Sheep was right, and I want to hear where that thought was going.
Oh, pinning it to a card. Like that way that like especially because certain strategies are so pushed when they come out, like attaching it to a certain card. Now you know you're hitting a certain archetype, right? Now especially in standard. I would again. I like this discussion a lot, Hydra, and we don't have to agree 100% of the time. I don't know what's different between what you mentioned though, like reducing. Let's we reduce. I don't know, priest health by 5. I don't know how that's a whole lot different from changing a super important linchpin card that is now 1 mana or 2 mana more than it should be.
Because
than
it's
when it was
one
printed.
card versus the 300 cards that are in the meta.
But in Standard, one card can make or break an archetype. And now you're talking about it. Really, it's not that many cards though when you change health though, Hydra, because some classes can't take advantage of that health change, right? It's not like, oh man, they're down 5 health, now everybody can take advantage. I mean, some people like Priest are just still going to be sitting there and be like,
but they'll
well,
get
I
preyed
can't.
on by certain archetypes at that
Well,
point.
100%, and that changes the balance.
Right?
But I still think it's like tomato. Okay, you've changed the health total of the class versus, and I'm looking at it from this combined perspective of I'm playing Standard, which is a lot more limited than Wild, where my options are limited as far as strategies go, and they're pushed, and they're structured, and we know they're coming. So are everybody else's strategies and structures. They're all pushed. We know what's coming with them. And so it's not like a free-for-all like it is with Wild, where I'd say, like, yeah, I don't think you could get away with the health total changes in Wild. I think attaching it to a card makes a lot more sense in Wild because now you know you're hitting what you want to hit, right? And if a Reno Rogue doesn't want to go down to 15 health, they can just not run Secret Passage and build the deck differently. But a Pirate Rogue... like they can't get away with that lateral movement and not run Secret Passage. They're going to have to do some goofy stuff. Like they're going to have to do some like listener series like, well, I can't use epics, so I got to run Cutting Class. And that completely changes how they build the deck. And so I see that I see the health change attached to a card. I don't know if they'd ever consider that. I don't even know if it's being considered. That might be.
I haven't heard anything either way. Yeah.
Tinfoil hat. We might need to like send that to Hat in a DM or something like that. Like, hey, have you guys thought about doing this?
That may be a
and
good
then
idea.
and then Hat will be like, yeah, I'll totally tell the devs. And devs will be
technically,
like,
it
I hate
already
that. I
is
don't wanna do
tied
that
to
ever.
a card.
But I'm just saying, like in standard, the equation's a lot less complicated, and
kind of because,
I would think.
for example, if we're thinking. Maybe not so much this expansion as last, but Shaman, right? If they want to push the Reno Shaman with, yes, Reno, but the Doc Holiday. Yeah. If they're trying to make that more competitive, right? Because they had nerfed it at one point and then it kind of went away. But if you bump up the health of Shaman as a whole, then all of a sudden Nature Shaman goes from like a fringe playable at like top legend thing to I can just ignore the board because I have 5-10 more health. And that breakpoint changes and I no longer care about your board. I just care about drawing my combo pieces and I can just get there. And all of a sudden Nature Shaman is like out of control. So I do kind of think that doubling down on that, tying it to a card would probably be more beneficial than tying it to a class for that exact reason. Because if we're tying it to Doc Holiday and all of a sudden Doc Holiday gives you 5 more health, then that doesn't have the Nature Shaman side effect that would happen otherwise. This is a standard example. We can make examples in our format as well. Secret Passage is the one that I mentioned earlier for Rogue. We could see it with Warlock. We don't want like Questline or general, essentially Pain Lock, but our version, which is stronger. We don't want that getting more health, but maybe we want Reno Warlock to get more health. So we could tie it to like a Ticketus or something that Reno Warlock would be happy to run, but maybe does, maybe doesn't already run, right? I think tying it to a card opens up a whole nother level of possibilities that I don't know if the team has considered, because we just mentioned that here and now we've taken it and run with it. And I think it has a lot of really exciting possibilities.
I also think, though, that to a certain extent, they're willing to cut bait with older strategies sometimes in standard because they're not the newest, the newest, the cards that are the strategies that are selling packs right now. And so like if Nature Shaman got a bunch of support and they need to tune down Nature Shaman, they might just knock off the 5 health. And if you say, well, what about Highlander Shaman? I mean, they might just say, who cares? That deck is bad. Like it's just like they might just not care.
It's actually not as bad as the stats necessarily show. By the way,
I mean, well, you get my point though. Like it's like I don't know.
Yeah, your point remains absolutely.
I don't know. I don't like. They just might not care, especially when you get to the end of a 6-set cycle where it's just like, but think about the Menagerie Warrior. It's like, we haven't had a Menagerie Warrior since last year. Beginning of last... What are you talking about? Shut up. All right, Grandma, it's time to go to bed. Like, there might be... They just might... They seem like they might be willing to cut bait with that kind of thing. But, I don't know. This was a fun discussion, though.
It was. Speaking of cutting bait, John Haidt has cut bait with the Warcraft team. So Ben Hearthstone, friend of the pod, has shared Ben Haidt's announcement. And so for those unfamiliar, Ben Haidt oversees the company's collective efforts around all titles within the Warcraft universe, which includes Hearthstone and Warcraft Rumble. So the overall post goes, as the Warcraft general manager, but John Haidt oversees the company's collective efforts around all titles within the Warcraft universe, including the ongoing development of World of Warcraft, both the modern and classic games, Hearthstone, and the forthcoming, no longer forthcoming, mobile entry Warcraft Rumble, in addition to new content and projects that enhance the community's experience outside of the games, and new opportunities to extend the Warcraft universe to new audiences around the world. John joined Blizzard Entertainment in 2011 as lead game producer on the award-winning World of Warcraft expansion, Mists of Pandaria. That was ages ago. He also served as production director for Diablo 3, Reaper of Souls, and Diablo 3 on console before returning to the WoW team as production director. It goes on, but it cut off. So John Haidt has now officially resigned his post on the Warcraft team. It looks like from some of his subsequent posts that he's kind of going on to something different. I would speculate been headhunted, if not sought out the alternate opportunity himself, which makes sense because he's been with the Warcraft team. It says that he joined Blizzard Entertainment in 2011 as lead game producer of WoW, Mists of Pandaria. Y'all, 2011 was 13 years ago. So
stop saying that.
So it makes sense that he's moving on, whether it be headhunted or whether he's kind of sought out alternate opportunities, because he's been with Blizzard and WoW in particular for over a decade. I'm doubling down, Hydra.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. In all honesty, good for him. He's been working on the franchise that we know and love in our little world of Hearthstone here that isn't so little anymore, even though I do remember when they built Hearthstone, they did not expect it to blow up the way that it did, which was quite interesting. I remember Ben Brode talking about that, about it being kind of this small thing, and they did not realize we were gonna have worlds and all this stuff. And so congratulations if John Haidt is moving on to a new project, just something. I mean, if you've been working on the same thing for 13 years, maybe you just want to explore something else. So I look forward to seeing what John will be doing next, in all honesty.
Yeah, I got nothing to add. I think what Sheep said. I'm good.
Excellent. Well, that lets us transition to our main discussion topic. And I'm going to let SchmoopieDady introduce it in all of its glory. SchmoopieDady, take it away.
We got another Tempo Storm report. And This Tempo Storm report did a couple things. It removed Kingsbane Rogue from tier 1, and it took Miracle Rogue, and it said, you know what, Miracle Rogue is too broad a concept. We actually have two separate types of Miracle Rogue. We have what I call Pack Rogue or Knoll Rogue, which is centered around Twisted Pack and making the Knolls, and we've highlighted that on this show. And then we have the Miracle Rogue that's more minion-based, that doesn't run Shadow Step, that is just play a bunch of cards, play a bunch of cards, play a bunch of cards, and you're playing like War Master and Stenographer and getting Giants down on turn 3, and we've highlighted that on this show as well. And those are different archetypes, with Pack Rogue being better. And so they differentiated that between those two in the top spots. And then there's Garrote Rogue, and then there's Egg Hunter, and then there's Pirate Rogue, and that is your tier 1.
4 out of 5 of those seem to be Rogue, Mr. Daddy.
There's 4 out of 5 of those do seem to be Rogue. Tier 2, dropping out of tier 1, is Reno Paladin, which in theory farms Rogue. It eats up Rogue, but it's only tier 2. Reno Shaman, which I don't know what it's trying to prey on, because I'm pretty sure it loses to Pirate Rogue and Garrote Rogue, but and also has answers for the Miracle Rogue, but it's around. Aggro Priest,
it can pull through. It can pull through some of the rogues. I don't know. It's probably pretty even, I would think.
Yeah, probably not super polarized, I would assume.
Aggro Priest has good matchups, I would think, into the minion-based Miracle Rogue. Pack Rogue's a little bit more difficult because of the early Knolls. It gets stomped by the Garrote Rogue. It beats the Egg Hunter, which is feeding off of the top 2 decks to be in tier 1, by the way. Egg Hunter just stomps on Miracle Rogue. So once you get your egg combo down and you start trading in the Lions infinitely, you're good to go. Quest Mages, I'm assuming I haven't seen the exact list, but if I were gonna guess, it's the Ignite Mage and or Tony Exodia type deck, where you're basically just using the quest to stall for a turn, and then you're leaning on your ice blocks, and then you win. Yay! Yeah. Reno Druid keeps looking decent. It keeps looking good. It just sort of like neutral into every sort of matchup. It can out health Garrote Rogue and mess it up. It can ramp so high that it has tools that it can deal with Miracle Rogue. It can delete an Egg Hunter's board with Reno Lone Ranger. Like it's just sort of, it can outvalue Reno Paladin. It's just sort of got options to beat everything in the meta that's tier 2 and tier 1 without actually being necessarily prolific at all of them or very good, but it can get there. And then there's Kingsbane Road, which just does Kingsbane stuff. Like it goes face when it needs to go face. It has Blade Flurry. You can play control. It can play aggro. It's just, decent deck. And so the theme is, and the whole reason why I pinned a tweet from May 17th was this week was what if the best deck in Wild doesn't have a purple border around it? And at that time, it was already looking like it was Roguestone. Like we just had all the Secret Passage decks were tier 1. And meanwhile, we had people that were like, gnashing their teeth and tearing their hair out about how bad Seedlock was. I'm starting to hear community sentiment turn, and people are starting to get grumpy about Rogue. I don't know, Hydra. Should we do something about Rogue?
So I've never really had a lot of empathy for the people that played a lot of Seedlock and that type of thing, because it wasn't really my jam, right? So when their decks were getting nerfed, I was like, yeah, okay, cool, right? But when they wanted, if we're going to start talking about Rogue, and that's something that I appreciate, I at this point now I can feel that empathy. I can now feel maybe in their shoes at this point in time, if they're going to touch it. I prefer, not obviously as somebody who loves the class. I love that there's different. I know a lot of them are similar, but the different archetypes that you can play. I rather than not, but the evidence is there, right? Like 4 out of 5.
It's kind of wild. Yeah,
it's insane, and even because we were doubting the last Tempo Storm report, we were looking that because Pirate Rogue was in tier 1, and you and I think we had discussed, like, is it really? Like,
yeah,
it, like, is it? But it's still there, man. Like, it's still there, and like, is it too much at this point? I don't want to go on record as saying, yes, it's too much. You guys should get rid of Rogue because I like playing Rogue, but it is a bit much at this point. However, being wild sometimes does have the ability to sort itself out in its, isolated ecosystem that it is. But it's been a minute, and Rogue is still sitting there. It ain't Warlock though, so I guess we're taking turns.
It's funny though. So like if you look on sites like Donkey, stuff like the Minion Miracle Rogue, the win rate has actually dropped. Like it dropped a lot because it's a lot easier to counter, especially if you're playing Reno Paladin. A single Enter the Colosseum basically deletes the miracle rogue, like on turn 3. So like, okay, you're playing giant, you might be playing giants turn 3, you might even be break stepping giants on turn 3, but one Enter the Colosseum, I have now reduced all your threats to a single giant. And not only that, but that deck doesn't run Lotheb, so it's not like they're locking you out of board clears and then bouncing it and then recycling them and then going from there. So it's just, they're a lot easier to just sort of delete by, I'm just going to blow up your stuff forever. Versus the Pack Rogue, which has a little bit more scam and it's a little bit faster. And also you've got the Obsidian Shard, which a lot of good players I know don't like the harmonic hip hops, but I feel like they're hard to ignore. Maybe one harmonic hip hop. I love
harmonic hip hop.
Maybe one harmonic hip hop, one Zephyrus is it's a common way you see a lot of people going. Where
I love that card.
It's like you get a little bit, you're going a little flat earth, you're getting a little bit more reach, and you're slapping it on a 3/3 weapon already. So it's like, okay, it's no longer 9 damage for 0 mana. Now it's 18 damage for 2 mana. That's a little bit better than Pyroblast. So
a little bit.
It's Rogue in my mind is still counterable. Sometimes you play a what's it called? A Razor Scale, which again is a card I'm glad I'm on record as highlighting on this podcast as making impact in Wild. Sometimes you play a Razor Scale on 3 and the Rogue concedes because it can't do the thing. Like, and it doesn't have a way to remove it. And that happens a lot more often with Miracle Rogue or maybe Garrote Rogue than it does, let's say, Pirate Rogue or Pack Rogue.
That said, as the aggro druid, my opponent plays Razor Scale and I'm pretty much locked out of the game. Like, it's pretty much GG at that point too. So it's impactful against aggro as well.
But it's gross that a single card or a single tech card has that much influence on a meta too. That's also not necessarily a sign of a good meta. So I'm kind of two minds here. I can't take a decided stance that now is the time we need to nerf Rogue. I can't quite get there because I feel like it's still counterable, especially because if I see any of these decks in tier 1 except for Egg Hunter with Skipper Warrior, the deck that I hit Legend with last month or this month, I'm a happy bunny. So I can't get too up in arms because I still feel like there are counters and there is counterplay to them, but it is getting out of control, and some players will tell you that it's already out of control, and that's finally starting to filter down into the greater, we'll call it Reddit populace, where it's like, I'm so sick of seeing rogues. I'm so sick of seeing rogues draw infinite cards. I'm so sick of seeing rogues deal, have infinite stats on turn 1 and turn 2. I'm so sick of seeing rogues I've been blowing up their boards all game, but it doesn't matter because even though they've been threatening boards, they can still gun me down with a 32 damage combo. So we might just be there. It might be time to take a serious look at Passage. And I had a tongue-in-cheek sort of response in May where it's just like, guys, are we doing this now? But I think it's a real discussion now amongst the community.
Yeah, I also think that it sort of depends still on what Blizzard sees on their end data-wise, right?
Yeah.
So this is what we see, right? This is what our wild experts are saying. This is people D5 and above into Legend are running into. This is what's the thing. What is the real data that Blizzard has? I don't know. Right? Maybe it doesn't reflect the same thing, and maybe they won't touch it based on what they're seeing, right?
Yeah, and experience-wise too, I'd say of the 5 decks that are in that top slot, the one that has the really kind of screwed up strange interaction that really bugs me is probably Egg Hunter, with just the infinite boards that can trade into something infinitely for 0 mana forever. Yeah. That's like duels, man. That's some messed up stuff. That's probably also living on borrowed time, if I'm completely honest, and it's really one broken standard deck away from being fixed. As much as Tom loves it, Tom, close your ears. Don't be listening right now. But it's right now. It's one of the decks also keeping in check the Pack Miracle Rogue, the Miracle Rogue. It's a little bit worse into anything aggro, but it's a check on the top 2s.
So if you are balancing Wild, and you're looking at Egg Hunter in particular, what would you nerf probably, but what balance adjustment would you put forward to kind of address that?
Well, that's the problem. The way that it's set up, it's so degenerate. I think you just delete it. I think you just do something like you make Huhuran 7 mana or something like that, so that when she's called out, she's not free. Or you somehow change the text on Moknathal Lion that it's not doing what it's doing and doesn't have the same interaction. It's
take Rush away.
That's a good one. Yeah, that would kill the card.
That's not bad.
Yeah, let's take Rush away, but make it a 5/5. Sure. That's fine. That's great. That's fair. The card will see no play. I think if you're gonna touch Egg Hunter, you gotta just murder it. You can't. There's no half measures for a deck like Egg Hunter because it's like well, how do we lightly touch Turtle Mage? You don't lightly touch Turtle Mage. You take Turtle Mage and you send it to the farm up state with your aunt and her life partner, and it'll frolic in a field and live the rest of its days being happy and live out a very long, fulfilling life in the daisies, right? Sure, that's what you do. You can't do half measures with a deck like Egg Hunter. It's too goofed. Whereas I think you do have a little. Rogue has so many tools and so much more. Its interactions are much more. There's a lot more synergy, and there's a lot more avenues. And you could say, okay, well, let's make Secret Passage. This is a really harsh nerf. Let's make it 1 mana C2 cards. That'd probably still see play in a lot of decks. But that does ramp it down, whereas I don't think there's anything you can do to Egg Hunter on a similar scale of a similar harshness that doesn't straight up kill the deck. Sorry, Hydro, what were you going to say?
I was just going to ask a question not 100% related to the deck you were talking about. So if you had more to say, let me know.
No, I think that's good.
Okay, I was going to ask where the Notorious Seedlock is on this list.
Oh, that's a tier 3 deck. Thanks
for clarifying.
Yeah, that loses to Pack Miracle Rogue, that loses to Miracle Rogue, that loses to Garrote Rogue, It actually does lose to Egg
Aggro
Hunter.
Priest.
It loses to Pirate Rogue. Egg Hunter actually trades into the Giants infinitely, and so that loses to that unless they're playing like you need to be playing Soul Freeze, and even then like your odds are bad. It loses to Reno Paladin pretty hard because of actually no, that's probably a 50-50 matchup. It dumpsters Reno Shaman.
Yeah.
It's happy to see Reno Shaman. It dies horribly to Aggro Priest. It dies to Quest Mage. Reno Druid is actually a fairly close matchup.
I can see that.
I think the 30 seed lock is better into Reno Druid. The 40 seed lock is, I'm not going to call it even. I'm going to call it slightly favored. And it dies immediately to Kingsbane. Like you queue into Kingsbane and your portrait explodes. It doesn't even let you play the match. So that's basically the breakdown of Seedlock's matchup spread. And so like, you know, I don't know about you guys. I have people come into my stream and they're like, oh man, you hit legend early already. How'd you beat all the Seedlocks? And it's just like, I literally played decks that hit them in the face hard.
Yeah.
The thing is, if I play a competitive deck, it beats Seedlock.
Yeah.
Weird. Interesting.
If you don't play a competitive deck, it may not beat Seedlock. But that's the thing. Are we at with Seedlock? It becomes an interesting discussion where are we Pirate Warrior again? Right? Like, are we just like, is it such an effective noob stomper that it needs to be touched? I think that's a reasonable discussion. I think that's a discussion to be had. But it's not, we shouldn't be having a discussion of Seedlock is too powerful, because that is not the context of the discussion that you should be having. It's not. It's very beatable.
No.
So.
And I think that the Questline Warrior was also strong against so many of the meta decks that like hitting it was much more relevant. I think that since Seedlock is kind of a glass cannon, like it folds against the meta decks, and it feasts upon Reno piles, but it like that has a place in the meta. Like
Some Reno piles, not all of them.
True.
Like ping. I mean, like I don't know. Like Reno Paladin in particular can run Horn of the Windlord, and you know, and a couple of weapon buffs, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right.
See,
yeah,
I
that's
said
a
Reno
problem.
piles.
Oh yeah,
Reno
piles,
Paladin is much
yeah,
more
yeah.
like refined and much more with it. Piles is most of the others, not necessarily shaman, not necessarily priest, but
Priest is one of those. Actually, Reno Priest. If you love Reno Priest is one of those decks that's doing a little bit better at high meta right now than it is at lower meta, because Reno Priest does have tools that it can kind of deal with Miracle Rogue. It has enough disruption. It can kind of deal with Garrote Rogue. Egg Hunter, I think, is tough, but like you can stall until you Reno the Ranger their board and then they explode. Pirate Rogue is not great. You outvalue Reno Paladin. You can outvalue Reno Shaman. Aggro Priest kind of sucks. Quest Mage, you can disrupt it. It's not great. Reno Druid, that's probably pretty even as far as greed and disruption goes. Kingsbane Rogue, you instantly explode. Once again, it's like, it's weird. It's so weird. No, I'm kidding. There are ways that you can kind of get around it, especially if you're like a Tech W guy and you've got like a sticky finger in your ETC, right? If you're still one of those sociopaths doing that, like, yeah, you can beat Kingsbane Rogue. So like Reno Priest is not all that bad a deck. It doesn't like Glare, right? It does not like Seedlock. But it's okay. It's okay. Treant Druid. Dude, the Treant Druid that I think is somewhere in tier 3.
good.
It eats Seedlock for breakfast. Eats
Oh,
it
yeah.
for breakfast. Because you build non-consequential boards until you finally build a board that's consequential and you buff the hell out of it. So like you can get there with that. And Seedlock is like, okay, they can send a bunch of Giants on a broom, but they can't kill everything. And you probably have enough for lethal even after they kill as much as they can. So it's I can't say the meta's in the worst spot ever. I can't say that I'm beating down the door, that I'm lighting fires, that I'm saying we need change in the wild meta, which is weird, which is a weird space to be, because you're looking at a Tempo Storm report, and there's 4 decks that play Secret Passage in it in tier 1.
Yep.
But it's not all that
Good
bad.
card.
But it's not all that bad. There's a fair amount of variety, and things are fairly balanced, and there is some counterplay and some counter strategies. But like,
Could be 4 decks playing Ice Block.
it could, yeah, that would
It sure could.
Dude, we've nerfed Infinite Quest Mage, and now we have like Ping Mage, which I swear is just Hostage Mage, just dressed up in slightly different dressing. I know Sheep's been playing it.
The other dressing is fun though.
It is, but that's been there, Sheep. That's been sitting there. Like, that is not any new cards that are making that viable. We're using all old cards and like old tools.
Sleet Skater and the legendary Elemental are new-ish.
Yeah, but that's to this expansion. I'm just saying, like, that's to this expansion. Like, Quest Mage was still around, just nobody was playing this yet because, like, you know, we hadn't had time to, you know, craft war crimes yet. And so, like, you know, this is I think that's like the newest, like, most war crimey deck we have out there, completely, to be completely honest.
I've been sharing it with my more standard involved friends.
Oh no.
Like in Squelch, and people have been like, I only have like a minimal win rate or a minimal star multiplier. This deck is so much fun. I'm loving it. And I'm like,
oh my god, no! You're making enemies the entire time. They're making enemies the entire, getting friend requests. They're just like, thanks for that. I had that sweep on stream in THL.
Dano loves it.
It was I had a sweep on stream in THL. I streamed it. It was a 3-0.
Yeah,
It's like a half an hour video because like 20 minutes of it is me playing Ping Mage into Big Shaman. It's a disaster of a deck. My first ice block got popped on turn 5 and I won. Like, it's like that's not that has to be on like tier 3. I actually haven't checked out and see what's in tier 3. Tier 3 is actually probably really interesting, except for DH. DH and DK probably have nothing in tier 3 except for, like, you know, token decks. I don't know. Did let's call it up. Did Reno Hunter make it? Like, Reno Hunter's quietly like okay. You can play Secret Hunter and do okay. Like, you could play a lot of like stuff that you will not find on the meta report and do fine.
I can read you tier 3.
Can you please?
So
That'd be cool.
So tier 3 goes Giant's Questline Warlock,
Sure.
Togwaggle Druid,
Yep.
Reno Priest, Big Shaman, Ping Mage.
there it is.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Miracle Priest,
Okay.
Alex Rogue,
Sure. Ew.
Treant Druid, Mechathoon Warrior,
Ew.
Fake deck.
Even Unholy Death Knight, and then Aggro Demon Hunter.
So those last two, since they don't have a tier 4 anymore, those last two we can safely just stick in tier 4 and never touch them, right? Never craft.
Yeah.
Those decks. Never craft those.
Don't
decks.
craft them.
What about
Play him if you want
Warrior,
fun.
I wouldn't do either.
I got toasted by Mechathoon Warrior on stream last night, but I think I did have an out. I think Skipper Warrior is like Skipper Warrior is fine. I specifically have a problem with the Mechathoon Warrior build because my second Shield Shatter can't be used for removal. So if I ever find myself in a compromising situation where I can't use my second Shield Shatter because now it's a combo piece, it's how I end up blowing up my Mechathoon. I just don't trust the deck. I just can't trust the deck. I feel like it's fake deck. So I don't know. Though I got tuned up and somebody got a Neon tweet out of a Mechathoon Warrior list not too long ago. They're on like Neon 31's website. And it looks like the meta list. Like that's the way you play Mechathoon Warrior if you're going to play Mechathoon Warrior. I just think Skipper Warrior is just, personally, I think it's probably more well-rounded and it's better into this meta. Especially if like if the dream is all you're facing are rogues, like it dumpsters Miracle Rogues because you're running, like, again, the version I'm playing from Maxi is Bladestorm and Barov, and you can do silly stuff like, oh, well, I played a spell last turn, so I can do Buckler, Shatter, and then Aftershocks, and that's 8 damage. That kills all the 8/8s my opponent had. Garrote Rogue, Garrote Rogue, you just out armor him. Pirate Rogue is laughable, right? And like if you're just seeing the rogues, it's cool, which makes it like a nice day one deck. I don't know. Yeah. So like again, I don't think the meta is in dire straits, but it is in Roguestone, and you are going to hear people start complaining about it. And I don't think those complaints are illegitimate. It's just kind of like we have such a high standard in Wild for when we actually care and like want nerfs. If we're gonna have one to like something like Secret Passage, that's a better bullet to use it on than, let's say, like, hey, let's ban Seedlock temporarily until we can figure out what to do with it.
Agreed.
So that has been my opinion for a long time, and glad I'm seeing that pay out now.
Unrelated advice with SchmoopieDady.
Where's the ambush coming from?
You. Go.
Me? I'm coming up with unrelated advice?
For yourself.
Yes.
For myself? Okay, fine. All right, so SchmoopieDady.
Your challenge accepted.
SchmoopieDady, you're moving into a new classroom next year. You've got all your stuff in your other classroom right now. Like, what is like your top 3 mission for how you're going to move yourself into your new room? Thank you for asking this question, because it's actually really interesting. You see, somebody asked me, well, like, what are you moving? and my response was a bunch of dumb stuff. And they're like, well, like, is it like papers or like lab equipment? And like the actual answer is like piles of like duct tape and pipe insulation and marbles and bubble solution and sets of Jenga, like dumb stuff, right? And I don't use the word stuff when I mention this. So like I need to take and like possibly like a CRT TV, right? So that my for reasons. My mission number 1, when I'm moving myself into the next room, is bring the boxes from the stuff that your wife orders offline, off the interwebs. Bring some boxes in so that you can pack yourself up, because you've got a lot of odds and ends. You got a lot of strangely shaped objects that need a home and are going to be hard to carry with your bare hands, and people are going to look at you funny. And like that part doesn't actually matter all that much, but you should at least be looked at funny while you're carrying it effectively and efficiently. So start by getting some boxes. Step 2 is going to be prepare to get your steps in. Wear some sensible shoes. I know it's June, and you don't like wearing socks to work when it turns into June, but it's important now that you actually wear some sensible footwear, because you could trip down the stairs and really hurt yourself and catch an edge, man. So like really just sort of look out for yourself there. And step number 3 is identify an elevator key, because like as fun as it would be to kind of like chuck that TV down the short landing that you have to go from the 600s to the gym block, it's probably not advised. There are capacitors inside of that TV, and they will discharge violently if they are, shaken in the wrong manner or come into contact with something that'll allow them to discharge, like your hand. dummy, when you pick up the shattered pieces of the TV. So what you should do is find an elevator key so that you can move it down to the 500s, which is still not good enough because you're still not actually on level with the gym block. So then you're going to have to roll it over to a second elevator and get it up to that is completely not in the direction of where your room is, and then go up that. But you were just informed today, you can't forget from your coworker, that you should always tell somebody if you're going to go in that elevator, because somebody got stuck in that elevator for hours last year, not all that long ago. And so send the TV in the elevator, walk up the steps next to the elevator to the next floor, don't let the door close because it might not open again, grab your TV, and go for the gold.
Wiser words have never been spoken. And you heard that on...
More to be wild.
Just decimate your hand with that CRT TV.
Let's do it.